It was a sweltering afternoon in Dallas, Texas, when the fate of Anna and her beloved cat, Nico, took an unexpected and tragic turn. Anna was returning from an afternoon of shopping when she saw, just a few feet from her house, Nico's body lying on the hot, dirty asphalt. The hit and run had happened so quickly that Anna barely had time to react. Her little friend's blood spread across the ground, and Anna's heart stopped for a moment, unsure of what to do. The pain that filled her chest was unbearable. She crouched down, tears in her eyes, trying to understand how something so cruel could have happened to her best friend, the one who was always by her side. Nico, the mischievous cat who loved exploring the neighborhood, didn't deserve this. Anna didn't know what to do, but she knew Nico's body needed to rest. After a moment of absolute silence, she wrapped him in an old cloth and buried him in the corner of her backyard, where flowers bloomed and the wind always blew gently. She had never imagined that saying goodbye would be so hard. The pain felt endless, as if a part of her had been ripped away. She sat beside the small grave, looking up at the sky, trying to figure out what to do next. With the weight of sadness on her shoulders, she went inside, feeling as though something had been lost forever. In the days that followed, Anna's house felt empty, without Nico to play with or snuggle up to. The loss lingered in every corner. The neighbors tried to comfort Anna, but nothing could fill the void the cat had left behind. Still, Anna forced herself to move on. However, a persistent doubt began to form in her mind. Was it really Nico? She wondered, clinging to the last memory she had of him. The thought that she might have buried the wrong cat was unbearable, but something was bothering her, as if a mystery hung in the air. It was on a Thursday morning, a week after the accident, that the inexplicable happened. Anna was washing dishes when she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, she froze. Nico was there, in his usual spot, as if nothing had happened. His eyes were the same, his fur soft, his ears perked up. But something was off. He was motionless, not meowing like before, just staring at Anna with a fixed, deep gaze. Surprise and fear completely overwhelmed her. How could he be here? She had buried Nico with her own hands. Is this even possible? She thought, almost in shock. She stepped back, barely able to process what she was seeing. The cat stayed in place, undisturbed, and then slowly began to walk into the house. Anna stood there, her eyes fixed on the creature that had once been her friend, but now seemed like something different. He climbed onto the bed where he always slept and lay down, remaining still. Anna tried to convince herself that she was just seeing things wrong, but the feeling that something was very off wouldn't leave her. "What's going on?" she murmured, looking at the cat with suspicion. Desperate, Anna grabbed the phone and called her best friend, Julia. "Julia, you won't believe what happened. Nico came back. He's here." Julia's voice on the other end was full of skepticism. "Anna, are you sure? I saw you bury him. This can't be real." Her friend's tone only deepened Anna's anguish. What was happening? She wanted to believe she was hallucinating, but Nico's fixed stare wouldn't let her rest. Anna decided then that she needed to find out what was really going on. With her heart racing, Anna left the house, grabbing a flashlight and heading to the backyard where she had buried Nico. The ground was firm, but her hands trembled as she began to dig. Sweat dripped down her forehead and her stomach churned with every rock she removed. When she finally reached the bottom of the grave, what she saw made her freeze. Nico's body was there, intact, just as she had left it. It couldn't be the same cat in the house. So who was the cat inside her home? With heavy feet, Anna ran back to the house. When she entered, she looked for the cat, but he was no longer on the bed. The house was empty. There was no sign of him anywhere. Fear began to take over every thought. "Am I losing my mind?" she asked herself. But then she remembered the distant meow she had heard. Anna, overwhelmed by confusion, decided she needed answers, but she was too scared to find a logical explanation for everything that was happening. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house seemed amplified. As the early hours of the morning crept in, a peculiar noise woke her. It was a low meow coming from the backyard. Anna's heart raced. She looked out the window and for a moment thought she saw the shadow of a cat crossing the garden. But when she turned to look again, the shadow had already disappeared. Was that Nico? She wondered. Or something far beyond human understanding? Anna spent the rest of the night in vigil, her eyes heavy with sleep but her mind unable to rest. The cat's meow echoed in her head, but the vision of the shadow disappearing into the darkness still haunted her. Doubt gnawed at her heart. Was it Nico, the cat she loved so much, or something else? The idea that he might have returned in some supernatural way made her body tremble with fear. She no longer knew what to believe. The cat buried in the backyard was intact, and what she saw in her house somehow seemed wrong. When the sun finally rose, Anna felt a momentary relief. The day seemed brighter, safer, but deep down, she knew that what had happened during the night was just the beginning of something much deeper and more disturbing. As the day went on, Anna tried to carry on with her routine, but the thought that the cat might be wandering around her house watching her wouldn't leave her. She tried calling for Nico, but he didn't respond. He had never been a very sociable cat, but he always came when she called him, with that sweet meow that warmed her heart. In the afternoon, Anna decided to go to her friend Julia's workplace, hoping to find some rational explanation for what had happened. The sound of the car on the road seemed to be the only thing that distracted her a little from her troubled mind. Julia tried to comfort her, saying that the human mind in moments of intense grief can create alternate realities, illusions that seem tangible. You must have had a nightmare, Anna. This is all just a glitch in your emotional processing. But Julia's words weren't enough to calm the storm inside Anna. Something inside her still told her that what she had seen wasn't a product of her imagination. When she returned home, she found the silence that always accompanied her. But today, it was different. Something was out of place. As she entered, the feeling that something was watching her from the darkness was palpable. She looked around but saw nothing, until as she turned toward the living room, the cat was there. The same cat as before, with the same piercing eyes, the same shiny fur. But he still didn't meow. He just watched her, motionless. Nico? Anna called, her voice trembling. But the cat didn't respond, didn't even move. Desperate and feeling a strange presence around her, Anna closed all the doors and windows as if by doing so, she could isolate the house from whatever it was. But as soon as she turned around, the cat was in her path, blocking her. He didn't move, but he seemed more intense, more real than he had ever been before. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her eyes filled with fear. The cat didn't respond, just stared at her as if he knew what she was feeling. At night, Anna tried to sleep again, but the low, almost imperceptible meow woke her once more. It was as if he was trying to get her attention, but at the same time, something inside her prevented her from going to the backyard to look. She froze, her eyes fixed on the window where in the darkness she could see the movement of a shadow silently moving through the garden. Was it Nico? Or was there something else hiding in the shadows of the night? Something much deeper than Anna was willing to admit. The next day she made a decision. She would seek answers. She knew she couldn't keep living with that fear, with that doubt. She would try to understand what was happening, even if it was the last act of courage she had left. Anna picked up the phone and called the vet where Nico had been taken after the accident. She wanted to know more about how a cat could come back after a fatal accident. But when she called, the receptionist at the office told her something that left her in shock. "Anna, it's not possible that your cat came back. There's no scientific explanation for that. You buried him with your own eyes. Whatever is happening, you need to face it." Fear took hold of Anna once again. She knew that somehow logical explanations weren't enough to understand what was going on. She was being tested by something beyond her comprehension. But what was it? Something supernatural? Or perhaps a cruel illusion of her mind? As she tried to process everything that had happened, the presence of the cat was still there, in her house, in her life, and she knew she could no longer ignore what it represented. When night fell, Anna prepared herself for one last attempt to understand what was happening. With a flashlight in hand, she went to the backyard again, more determined than ever. She dug into the soil once more with more strength, more urgency. And as she touched the bottom of the grave, something cold ran down her spine. Nico's body was no longer there. The emptiness in the earth was even deeper, as if something had been ripped from it. Fear turned to panic. If Nico's body was no longer buried there, where was it? Anna turned and ran back to the house, her breath tight and her heart pounding in her chest. As she entered the living room, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Nico was there, on the couch, watching her as he always had. But in that moment, Anna knew. The doubt had disappeared. Something far beyond human understanding was happening, and she didn't know if she was ready to face it. Anna could no longer distinguish between what was real and what wasn't. The cat was there, its eyes fixed on her, its fur glistening under the dim light of the lamp. The feeling of discomfort grew, as if an invisible presence was filling every corner of the house. Fear overwhelmed her, but something else was there too, a curiosity, a need to understand. What had happened to Nico? What did he want? And more importantly, who or what was behind all of this? As the days passed, Anna began to notice that Nico's behavior was becoming increasingly strange. He didn't seem to react to anything, didn't recognize her as he used to, didn't meow nor seek affection. Yet he was still there, always watching, always still. Anna didn't know if he was there of his own will or if something had forced him to return. She wondered if Nico had been some kind of messenger, or if what had happened to him served another purpose. It was on a rainy night, as Anna tried to find some explanation, that she received an unexpected visit. Julia appeared at the door, her face filled with concern. "Anna, I know you won't believe this, but after everything you've told me, I think I'm starting to understand." Julia's words were a shock to Anna, who didn't know what to expect. "What are you saying?" Anna asked, her heart tightening. Julia took a deep breath and began to speak, almost as if she were reading from an old mystery book. "A long time ago, I heard stories about things like this. Stories about animals that come back from somewhere, but not in the way you think. It's not the animal you knew, it's something different. Something that might have been sent from another plane." Anna fell silent, unsure of what to say. The explanation seemed absurd, but Nico's presence in her house, his distant behavior, seemed to suggest that something beyond comprehension was at play. Julia continued, "I know this will be hard for you, but to try to understand what's happening, you need to let Nico get close to you again. He may not be the same, but he still has something to say. You need to trust him and, more importantly, trust yourself to handle this." Anna was skeptical, but at the same time she felt she had no other choice. She decided to follow Julia's advice and try to connect with Nico, even though she knew he was no longer the same. However, as she approached the cat that night, something extraordinary happened. When she reached out to pet him, Nico took a step back, and it was in that moment that Anna noticed a change in his eyes. They were no longer the eyes of her cat. They were empty, as if something was looking at her through him. A shiver ran down her spine, and as she looked at him, Anna understood for the first time that Nico was not there by choice. On a night of the full moon, with the house enveloped in an almost oppressive stillness, Anna felt that Nico's presence had changed. He was at the window watching the empty street, but his eyes were fixed on something she couldn't see. She knew it was no longer the cat she had known. Something had been summoned when he returned. And in that moment, a sense of terror took hold of her. The cat wasn't there to say goodbye. He had come back to fulfill a mission Anna didn't fully understand. Fear gripped her body, but Anna felt she had to act. Whatever was possessing Nico's body needed to be confronted. She knew the cat wasn't the real Nico, but something else. Something using his body to manifest in this world. With her heart racing, Anna grabbed a flashlight and headed to the backyard again, determined to uncover the truth. As she dug frantically, Julia's words echoed in her mind. He may not be the same, but you need to trust him. But Anna no longer knew who or what to trust. Everything felt like an endless nightmare, and every movement seemed to drag her deeper into an abyss of uncertainty. She dug until she found a small wooden box buried near Nico's old grave. Inside it was a strange amulet, covered in unfamiliar symbols. When Anna touched the amulet, she felt a wave of cold energy coursing through her body, as if she were connected to something beyond this world. She knew something was very wrong, but the answer to the mystery was right in front of her, in the form of that amulet. It was the key to understanding what was really happening to Nico. Anna stood up, the amulet in her hands, and walked to the living room where Nico was still watching. She knew her only chance to understand everything was to confront the entity that had taken the place of her beloved cat. With the amulet in her hands, she whispered words of courage to herself. Whatever it was, she would have to face it, and it was in that moment, with the amulet glowing in the darkness, that Nico turned to her, and finally, meowed. Nico's meow was low, almost a sigh, but enough to make Anna's heart race. The sound wasn't what she remembered, nor the familiar melody that always soothed her. It was something strange, as if something was struggling to communicate but lacked the ability to fully express itself. The cat, or whatever it was, looked at her with eyes that now seemed to carry an ancient, somber wisdom. Anna felt the weight of his presence, more oppressive than ever. With her hands still trembling, she raised the amulet toward Nico. She wasn't sure exactly what to do, but the object in her hand seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if it was begging to be used. Anna didn't want to believe what was happening, but something deep within her instincts told her that the amulet was the key to everything. When she held it closer to Nico, a faint light began to emanate from it, illuminating the room with an unsettling softness. Nico took a step toward her, but his posture was different, more rigid. His eyes were fixed on the amulet, as if recognizing something deep and distant. The air around them seemed to grow cold, and the atmosphere became heavy. Anna, holding her breath, felt a wave of sadness and anger mixing together. It was as if the cat was fighting against an internal force, something that didn't want to let him go free. "There you are, aren't you?" Anna whispered, more to herself than to the cat. "You're trapped. Something's controlling you, isn't it?" Whatever was possessing Nico seemed to understand her words because its eyes glowed intensely, as if an immense weight was pressing down on it. The cat took another step, slower this time, and then, in an unexpected movement, the amulet shone brightly, causing Nico to recoil, as if an invisible force was pushing him back. Anna felt an instant connection to the object in her hands, as if she was touching something that transcended her own reality. It was at that moment that the voice came, low and drawn out, but perfectly clear. "You can't stop me. He can't be saved." The voice sounded like an echo from a distant place, a malevolent presence that had infiltrated Nico's body. Terror gripped Anna, but she couldn't give up. She knew she couldn't let that entity remain in control of Nico. Something had to be done, and she knew somehow that the amulet was tied to it. Without hesitation, she raised the amulet high and began to recite the words that seemed to rise from within her. Words she had never learned, but that somehow felt as though they had been passed to her through the amulet. Each syllable she uttered seemed to weaken the presence that had taken hold of Nico, and the light from the amulet grew brighter, illuminating the entire room as if calling something forth. The cat retreated further, trying to hide in the shadows, but the light wouldn't let it escape. "No, you don't understand. He doesn't belong in this world. He was brought back for a reason," the voice responded, louder now, almost screaming, mingling with Nico's desperate meows. But Anna didn't stop. The words she recited seemed to hold power, a power she didn't fully understand but felt deeply. For a moment, everything fell silent. The amulet's light flickered one last time before fading, and the room was plunged into deep darkness. Nico stood in the center of the room, motionless, but something in the air had changed. The cat, which had seemed possessed by a malevolent Force now appeared to be an ordinary creature again, but with a sad look in its eyes as if it knew what had happened. Anna approached cautiously. She felt a wave of compassion for him, for everything he had endured. Nico looked at her, and for a brief moment it seemed to recognize the person it had always been to her. It stepped closer slowly, as if asking for forgiveness. But something inside Anna knew that what she had done wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Even though the cat was back, it had been touched by something far greater than either of them could understand. She picked him up in her arms, feeling the warmth of his body against hers, and whispered, "You're at peace now." "But I don't know what really happened, Nico. What you faced, what came back with me. This isn't over." Yet the cat meowed softly and nestled into her arms as if exhausted, and that was enough for Anna. She knew the battle wasn't about defeating what had possessed her friend. It was about understanding the mysteries that transcended what she could comprehend. And in that moment she felt that her life in some way was tied to the journey that still lay ahead. Anna spent the following days in a state of constant vigilance. Although Nico seemed to be back to normal, there was something about his behavior that she couldn't forget. The cat seemed quieter, more introspective, as if carrying a weight he couldn't share. She knew he wasn't the same anymore, and the feeling that he had been touched by something inexplicable consumed her. Nico's gaze, once so full of life and mischief, was now laden with a silent sadness, as if he knew something she couldn't comprehend. At night, Anna still felt the weight of the presence that had haunted her home. Even with Nico by her side, she couldn't ignore the sensation that something was lurking, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. She began to notice small details that had previously gone unnoticed. The sound of footsteps in the hallway when no one was there, a shadow moving quickly through the house, Nico's empty stare fixed on specific points in the room, as if he were observing something she couldn't see. It was on one of these nights, as Anna tried to rest, that she heard a faint noise coming from the garden. The sound was soft, but she recognized the low, agonized meow of Nico. Jumping quickly out of bed, Anna rushed to the window, her eyes wide with fear. Outside in the darkness, Nico stood in the center of the garden, staring intently at a distant point. The meow was so faint it seemed more like a sigh than a call. She hurriedly opened the door, and before she could reach the cat, he vanished into the shadows. Anna called out to him, but he didn't respond. Fear grew within her like a shadow, taking hold of her body and mind. Something was happening, something she couldn't control. Nico was no longer under her command. He had been marked by something beyond human understanding, and the bond she thought she had restored now seemed like an illusion. Determined to find answers, Anna went to the old backyard where Nico had been buried. She knew that to understand what was happening, she needed to revisit the place where it all began. The amulet was still with her, tucked away in her drawer, and in her heart, she felt it had a role to play. When she reached Nico's grave, she noticed something was different. The soil, once firmly packed, seemed looser, as if someone had disturbed it recently. With trembling hands, Anna began to dig again, her mind filled with questions and uncertainties. She knew she was dealing with forces she couldn't comprehend, but she also knew she couldn't hide any longer. What she would find there could change everything. When she finally reached the bottom, her eyes widened at what was buried. There was something more in the grave, something that shouldn't have been there. In the center of the earth, a black stone, carved with ancient symbols, was embedded in the ground, arranged in a pattern that resembled some unknown ritual. Anna struggled to remove the stone, and as she touched it, she felt a wave of energy coursing through her body, as if the earth itself was reacting to her contact. The stone was cold, yet it seemed to vibrate with an intense force. She knew this was no ordinary object. It was an item of some kind of power, a forgotten relic from the past. She pocketed the stone and ran back to the house, her fear now turning into a desperate urge to understand what was happening. When she entered, Nico was there, silent, watching her. But his eyes were different. The sadness had deepened, and a strange expression seemed to dominate his face. It was as if he knew what was coming but couldn't stop it. Anna sat on the couch, staring at the amulet and the stone. Everything seemed connected, but she didn't know how. The cat, who now seemed to be in a state of constant vigilance, walked over to her and lay at her feet. His eyes were fixed on the stone, as if he recognized its presence. Anna felt a strange connection with him, as if somehow they were sharing a burden that wasn't hers alone. When night fell and the house returned to silence, Anna felt that something was still very wrong. Nico's meow, which now seemed to come from somewhere distant, echoed through the walls of the house. It was as if he were trying to communicate, but in a way she couldn't understand. Something was approaching, something she couldn't face alone. Anna stood up, her heart racing, looking at the cat and the stone in her hands. What would she do now? How could she protect Nico and herself from this presence that had touched them? She knew she was in a battle against something much greater than herself. But one thing was certain. She couldn't let the cat, the friend she loved, be consumed by it. Anna spent the following weeks trying to understand what had happened to Nico. The stone and the amulet, now part of her daily life, were the only things connecting her to the strange mystery surrounding her cat. Each night, Nico's meows seemed to grow more distant, more ominous. He wasn't the same anymore. The presence she felt in the shadows of the house grew increasingly intense, as if something were drawing closer, something far beyond her control. It was on a particularly dark night that Anna decided to investigate more deeply. She knew that, to understand the true nature of what was happening, she needed to uncover the origin of the stone and what it represented. She spent hours at the local library, scouring ancient books and historical records, until she found something that sent a chill down her spine. The stone she had found in the backyard wasn't just an ancient artifact. It was a protective talisman used in summoning rituals. But contrary to what she had imagined, the stone wasn't a mere relic. It was the key to opening a portal between worlds, and Nico's return was tied to something much darker. Fear settled in Anna's chest, but she couldn't turn back now. Whatever had happened to Nico wasn't normal, and she needed to understand it all. The idea of a portal between worlds, of something beyond life and death, haunted her, but it was the only explanation that made sense. Somehow, the stone had opened a door that allowed Nico to return, but now she knew the cat was trapped somewhere between the two worlds, between life and death, and whatever was with him wasn't the same anymore. That night, her mind flooded with these revelations. Anna decided to confront whatever was haunting her home. When she returned, she found Nico sitting by the window, staring into the darkness of the night. He didn't move, but his eyes were fixed on her, as if he knew she was about to make a decision. She approached the cat cautiously but didn't hesitate. She knew what she had to do. The stone was still in her hand, pulsing softly with the same strange energy she had felt when she first touched it. With a deep breath, Anna recited the words she had read in the ancient script. The ritual was about to begin. The room grew colder, the moonlight filtering through the windows and illuminating Nico's face, which now seemed more distant than ever. He looked at her with an empty expression, as if something were consuming him from within. The cat slowly stood up, taking a step toward Anna, but it wasn't him. It wasn't the Nico she knew. Anna stepped back, terror gripping her body. The cat advanced, but its eyes were lifeless, as if controlled by an invisible force. She didn't know what to do, but the stone in her hand pulsed stronger, as if calling out to something. Suddenly, Nico stopped moving and stared intently at the amulet. The stone's glow intensified, and the entire house seemed to tremble. And then something happened. The moonlight grew brighter, flooding the room with an almost supernatural force. The cat arched its back, a deep, guttural sound emerging from its throat, as if something were trying to break free from within. Anna didn't know what was happening, but she knew the time to act had come. With a cry of determination, she raised the stone in front of Nico, reciting the final words of the ritual with all her strength. The air around them exploded in a flash of intense light, and for a moment, Anna lost all sense of reality. When the light finally faded, she was back in her living room and Nico was there, but he wasn't the same. The cat lay in his bed, his eyes now clear and calm, as if nothing had happened. The strange energy that had taken over the house was gone, and Anna, exhausted, fell to her knees. In that moment, she knew Nico had returned to his true state, but the battle she had fought wasn't entirely over. The stone and the amulet had served their purpose, but what else lurked beyond those forces? The portal had been closed, but something inside Anna told her that Nico's story was far from finished. Something much greater was still to come, something she would have to face again. But this time, she would be more prepared. Anna stood up, with Nico by her side, and looked out the window. The sky was calm, but she knew her life would never be the same. Whatever was at stake, she knew her love for Nico and the strength of her determination would carry her forward. They would face what was to come together. In the days that followed, Anna's house seemed finally peaceful. Nico, though still silent, had returned to his old routine, sleeping on Anna's bed, exploring the garden, and occasionally snuggling up beside her at night. Yet the feeling that something was still out of place never left her. Anna knew that what she had faced could not be so easily forgotten. Whatever that being was that had possessed Nico's body, or whatever the force was that had summoned them, was still present in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. As the days passed, Anna tried to move on with her life, but the memory of the portal she had closed seemed to haunt her at every corner of the house. The stone and the amulet, now stored in a wooden box at the back of her closet, seemed to pulse from time to time, as if sensing her presence. What she didn't know was that, even with the portal closed, the balance between the two worlds had been irreversibly altered. One afternoon, while Anna was at home, listening to soft music and trying to relax, she heard a faint sound coming from the garden. It wasn't Nico's usual meow, but something deeper, something that sent a chill down her spine. She went to the window and, looking out into the garden, saw a shadow moving. But it wasn't Nico. It wasn't any of the familiar animals she recognized. It was a dark, looming presence, moving among the trees, watching her. With her heart racing, Anna quickly rushed to close all the doors and windows, but as she looked out the window on the opposite side, she saw the figure again. This time, it was closer. A tall man, cloaked in darkness, was dragging himself forward, as if slowly making his way toward her house. He didn't seem human, but his presence was so powerful that Anna couldn't look away. Fear gripped her body, and something inside her knew that this being was connected to what had happened to Nico. Without thinking, Anna ran to the box where the amulet and the stone were stored. She knew she needed to use them again. But what could she do about this being that was now beyond her control? When she picked up the objects, she felt a wave of energy surge through her hands, stronger than before. The amulet glowed with an intensity Anna had never seen. The stone, meanwhile, seemed to grow warm, as if preparing for something. She knew something was coming, something that could destroy everything she had tried to protect. Suddenly, the sound of knocking at the door interrupted her thoughts. She stared at the door with wide eyes. No one else could be there. She hadn't called anyone, and her neighbors were miles away. With trembling hands, Anna slowly opened the door. On the threshold stood Nico, but not the Nico she knew. His eyes were empty, his fur disheveled and dirty, as if he had been pulled from somewhere far away. But the strangest thing was what he carried in his mouth, a piece of paper. When Anna bent down to take the paper, Nico stepped back, still watching her with those empty, lifeless eyes. The letter was written in a language she didn't recognize, but the feeling she got from holding it was one of urgency, as if it were a warning. She quickly closed the door and stepped back, the paper in her hands. Whatever that message was, she knew she was now more involved than ever. The words written on it began to shift before her eyes, changing and rearranging themselves until Anna finally understood what was there. The balance has been broken. The portal was only temporarily closed. He will return. Fear paralyzed her. The presence she had faced before, the evil force that had taken over Nico's body, was preparing to return. But now she knew that to face it, she would need more than just the amulet and the stone. She needed to understand everything. the origins of the talisman, what that dark figure meant, and most importantly, how to restore the balance that had been lost. With no time to waste, Anna stored the letter and the stone with the amulet and set out, determined to find answers. She knew her next step was to go beyond the city, to seek out what no one else knew about the forces that were manipulating Nico's fate and hers. If she didn't find a way to close the portal for good, what she feared most of all could happen. But as she walked away from the house, she felt a shiver run down her spine. Nico, silent, was behind her, watching. But his eyes were now fixed on something beyond reality. Anna knew that on this journey the real battle was only just beginning. Anna drove out of the city, the feeling of being watched following her with every step. The path into the unknown, with Nico silently trailing behind, was a journey of no return. She knew there was no turning back now, that Nico's fate was now intertwined with hers in a way she didn't fully understand. Whatever that shadowy figure was, or the mystery surrounding the amulet and the stone, they were closer than she had imagined. The city seemed to grow more distant as she drove down the deserted road, the sound of the car engine filling the unsettling silence that enveloped the surroundings. She didn't know where she was going, but something inside her told her that the answer lay in a place beyond the reach of any logic. Fear still consumed her, but she was determined. Everything she had lost, all the suffering she and Nico had endured, seemed to point toward an ending she would have to face alone. After hours of driving, Anna finally arrived at a small town in the countryside, nestled between mountains and dense forests. The road was narrow, and the mist rising from the ground seemed to swallow everything around her. She knew she was close, that the answer was here, but her anxiety grew as she approached the small village. She parked the car and walked to an old bookstore in the center, its windows covered by heavy curtains, making the place even more mysterious. As she entered, Anna was immediately greeted by an elderly woman with silver hair and piercing eyes that seemed to see beyond appearances. "You're looking for answers," the woman said, without Anna having uttered a single word. "I know why you've come." Anna, surprised, asked, "How do you know that?" The woman smiled but didn't answer directly. Instead, she pointed to a bookshelf at the back of the store, where ancient books and esoteric manuals were scattered. "These books hold the answers you seek. But know this: what you find may not be what you expect. Sometimes, in seeking the end of a journey, you uncover something that cannot be undone." Without hesitation, Anna walked over to the books. Her fingers brushed across hundreds of yellowed pages until one book in particular caught her attention. It was covered in aged leather with embossed symbols on the cover. The title, though illegible, seemed to radiate a sense of power and mystery. When she opened it, the words seemed to dance on the page, as if trying to adjust to her vision. The woman watched her in silence, and finally Anna turned and asked, "What is this? What do I need to do?" "You have a choice, young one," the woman replied. "You can close this book and return to your life, or you can continue and risk everything. What you're facing isn't just about Nico. It's something much deeper. The balance between worlds has been broken. Those who cross this threshold can never return to who they were." Anna gripped the book tightly, her hand sweaty, her heart pounding faster. She knew that if she moved forward, there would be no turning back. She was about to open a door that might be darker than anything she had faced before. With a deep sigh, Anna read the words that began to form before her eyes. The stone, the amulet, and the portal are a triad of power that keeps the worlds in balance. But when one of the three is used to bring something back, the line between life and death becomes too thin to control. Those who seek answers may only find more questions. She turned the page, eager for more information. But a strange sensation began to take over her body. The words on the page began to glow with a soft, almost hypnotic light, and Anna felt a wave of dizziness. When she looked at the woman, her expression had changed. Her eyes, once warm and calm, were now darkened by an almost threatening energy. "What you've read is not the end," the woman said, her voice now almost inhuman. "It's only the beginning." A wave of dread washed over Anna like a tidal wave, and before she could say anything more, the woman stepped forward. She placed her hand on Anna's head, and Anna's vision distorted, the world around her beginning to crumble. "You came seeking answers," the woman said, her voice echoing in Anna's mind. "But when the portals open, what you seek may be lost forever." With those words, everything around Anna disappeared. Anna woke up with a start, sitting on a wooden bench, still in the bookstore. But the atmosphere had changed. The woman who had helped her was gone, and the store seemed empty. The book, now closed in her hands, was dull once more, as if nothing had happened. Panic gripped Anna, but as she looked around, she realized that time hadn't actually stopped. The sun still shone through the store window, and the street outside appeared unchanged. But something inside her had shifted. The fear, the sensation of being watched, was now constant. What she had read in the book, the words that seemed to move, were still etched in her mind. She knew the balance between the worlds had been broken, that what she had done by bringing Nico back couldn't be undone so easily. Unsure of what to do, Anna took the book and left the bookstore. Nico, who had followed silently behind her, still wore that empty expression, his eyes lifeless. The cat wasn't the same anymore, but Anna knew he too was tied to something greater, a force she couldn't control alone. The journey had changed them both, but what else did they have to face? When she got home, the silence was suffocating. Every shadow, every sound seemed to carry meaning, as if something was waiting, something about to reveal itself. She looked at Nico, who was now in his usual spot, but his presence wasn't comforting. He still didn't meow, still didn't behave as he used to, but somehow he seemed calmer. The portal she had closed wasn't truly closed, not until she resolved what lay behind it all. Anna knew she couldn't live in uncertainty any longer. She had to face what was coming, and what she would face wasn't just about Nico or the stone. It was about what lay beyond the line between worlds. She had already been touched by it, and nothing could ever be the same again. Night fell, and with it came the feeling that something was about to happen. The wind blew through the open windows, and the sound of Nico's faint meow, coming from somewhere distant, filled the air. It was as if he was calling to her, but she didn't know where to or why. She looked at the cat, and for the first time realized he was there not as a victim, but as part of the mystery that surrounded everything. With a heavy sigh, Anna took the amulet, the book, and the stone. She knew that by opening that portal again, there would be no turning back. What she had to do was risk everything, seek answers, confront what was waiting, and accept that there would be no more certainty from that moment on. Nico's meow grew, louder, closer, and when Anna turned to him, she felt a sudden wave of calm. The cat was now in front of her, his eyes fixed on hers. For a moment it seemed as if he was speaking to her, but not with words, with the sheer presence of something greater. "I'll help you find your way, Nico," she said softly, with renewed determination. "We'll figure this out, no matter what it is. I won't run away anymore." And with that, she took the first step into the unknown, with Nico by her side. The story of Nico and Anna, between life and death, love and sacrifice, wasn't over yet. But in that moment, Anna felt that even if the path was uncertain, she was ready to face it. The balance between the worlds might be restored, or perhaps the answers she sought were beyond what she could comprehend. But she knew it didn't matter. What mattered most was that she and Nico were together, and together they would face anything. Do you believe animals can come back to say goodbye? Have you ever been through something like this? Leave your comment. And so, we come to the end of this intense and uplifting narrative. I hope you were as moved as I was while hearing this story. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it greatly helps with our growth and allows us to continue creating more content like this. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, which will be filled with more reflections and inspiring stories. Also, check out the video appearing on the screen right now. I'm sure you'll love this next experience. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon.